Here we go again.
Here we are. Um,
Hi, I'm
I,
Jeremy Renta.
and I'm Amy Solara, and this is Mantras
Mantra
and
and
Magic.
magic, yeah.
So we are talking today about planetary mantras, planetary magic.
That's that good stuff. That's that good.
I think it's fitting during Mercury in retrograde.
We definitely need to be working with some Mercury. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because people, they give this time such a bad rap, right? Like you hear, oh my God, it's going to be Mercury in retrograde. Don't sign any contracts. Don't book any flights or hotels and everything's going to go wrong. Well, it's living in such a fear mentality. I think Mercury is just reminding us that we need to review things before we post them or send the message or the email. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I feel like every single time we have any type of retrograde, it's like, hey, have you been paying attention to the lessons that the universe has been trying to tell you? Maybe you should be looking at that. Like Saturn, as it comes around and it does its thing, whenever we have that in retrograde, it's like, you're just a lot of times we just go along with life. Like luckily Mercury, because it happens, the retrograde happens, like 3 to 4 times a year. It happens relatively often every year.
Which is better because it's the representative of our mind and
exactly
how our brain works.
Yeah, exactly. So like as long as we are communicative creatures, which we are, we need to be able to make sure that we're expressing ourselves in the way that we need to, that our message is coming across clearly. This really does tie back into magic, and I don't know if you were going to make this point, but like you were supposed to be focused on the things that you're doing. We get so easily distracted now. I'll say supposed to, but we get so easily distracted nowadays because we have Instagram, because we have all these other things that are like trying to catch our attention. And in magic, you cast your circle, you set your corners, you call in whatever guide you're working with, and then you go to work. But you have to always have in mind that safe space is set, that you set it, and that you are still maintaining it. And whatever that you're putting into the universe, if you put out a spell, if you're casting, whatever it is, you have to be able to be aware of it so that it's there, like at least in the back of your mind. Like that's the reason why we journal. It's the reason why when we set intentions, we put it down and you come back and you review it. You don't fixate on it, because if you do that, a lot of times the energy gets stuck and stagnant. But if you're reminded of it, if something comes along like Mercury in retrograde that says every couple of months, hey, maybe you should review what happened in the past 4 months, you're going to be a lot more likely to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. You're going to actually be able to stick with something, and you're going to make sure that you're being truthful and honest in everything that you're presenting.
Yeah. Yes. I will say more step to that beyond being mindful while you're working magic, being very, very careful with your choice of words. And this gets like repeated in so many different places, like in the 4 agreements, being true to your word, in Egyptian magic, where like the exact word that's going to be used is going to affect things so carefully. In Sanskrit, and this is why we're getting back to the mantras, is when you say a specific word, you're activating that magical lotus on the petals, like within your body. And if you say the wrong one, you're activating a different one. So you have to be so careful with what you say, because if you say clean versus cream, it's like those 2 very different energies. And
the energetics, it's going to definitely be different in the way that it shows up and whatever the spell you're casting, and it could probably or possibly derail the thing that you put into effect or something else that's connected to it.
Right. It's like the butterfly effect. If the butterfly flew the other way, or like if it flaps its wings once instead of twice, which is how syllables work. And I think that's why I'm so mindful when I swear. It's less that I'm like, oh, that's vulgar. I actually really like to say the words like fuck. Like I like to swear, but I don't do it because I feel like it shifts the energy in a very specific way. So I only use it as like extreme emphasis.
Exactly. It's intention, whatever you're putting into it.
And I think a lot of people don't realize when they say like, oh, she was all like, and they were like, and I was like, I'm like, were you like that or were you that? Let's clarify that as well. Because we're so casual with our language, and it's something that we Americans have always been very berated for
Mm-hmm.
from other countries, where we're like speaking not to our potential, essentially.
Right.
And other countries, especially people who are new to the English language, are so much more careful with their words, because in their languages, like, there are different words for these things, and so they have to be very mindful about how they put their sentences together. Whereas most people that are raised here in the United States are so super casual that when it comes to magic and when it comes to mantra, it's an entirely foreign idea to be this careful with what's coming out of your mouth.
Right, and I think that is one of the things that's problematic with Western esoteric traditions when it comes to not understanding. Like, there's so much woo when it comes to any energy work or magic. Like, one of the reasons I really like ceremonial magic is because it's been practiced. People see what the results are, and you know what you're like. It may seem like pomp and circumstance, the robes, the way that you have your altar set up, or the way that you have the vault set up whenever things are
I don't even know what
once
that
a
is
ceremony
either,
has started.
I don't do ceremonial
Okay.
magic. I do eclectic witchcraft, which is entirely different. So go ahead.
Right. So, well, with a lot of the Golden Dawn stuff, there's, you have the room set up in a specific way to call in those certain energies. You're making the space, you're setting the space for those energetics to come in, for whatever the focus of attention is on each wall, how you're bringing the energy in from the west, how you're bringing the energy in from the south. So you do this so that you know the rules, and then you can play inside of that. It's an art. That's the reason why it's called a mystical art. It's just like music. You learn how to play guitar, you learn tablature, you learn how to read music, and then you can go off and you can make whatever you want to with it. But you have to have a bit of a structure to understand what the boundaries are, and what the sounds are that are going to be made inside of that boundary.
Right.
And then you have jazz, which is jazz is just kind of all over the
It's
place.
improvisational. And I think that's actually what eclectic witchcraft does, where
Right.
we stem from very traditional practices, whether it's Wicca, whether it's the Golden Dawn, whether it's Salima, even things like Asatru, the Norse religion, or Druidism, and European shamanic witchcraft. Like, there's so many different heritages and traditions and lineages that have led to the teachers that I've worked under. And it really is like a choose your own adventure story. But with that comes the carefulness of, like, this particular part really resonates with me, and this is why. Like, I have to know why. There's always a reason behind it all. And I draw upon Hindu mythology, which I know you do as well, and I draw upon Celtic mythology and Egyptian mythology, especially. That really resonates with me. And for the longest time, I used a lot of Greek and Roman pantheons, so that's familiar, but I'm not using it as much now, except in the form of planets. And so for me, I think that's starting to really tie in the East and the West, because the planets are universal.
Right. And the energetics of the planets is also universal, whether it's Mercury or, whichever god, whichever country you're talking about it from, it all has the same vibe to it. So that also makes me, think that obviously this stuff came from a much older civilization. It's not just the Greeks or the Latin or whether it's Hindu. These were things that people have been studying the stars for, I want to say longer than centuries, whatever that would be, like thousands,
millennia,
tens of thousands. Thank
millennia.
you. Yes.
Being specific with your words.
Yes, exactly. So, that's a completely different subject, us talking about astrology, but the whole idea of, like, what the energies are, it makes me kind of wonder how it was and what it was that people saw in those energies. Because, again, from our understanding of what the not too distant past was, they were ground based, right? They were kind of landlocked. They didn't go into space. They didn't know what Jupiter looked like. They didn't know what Saturn looked like.
No, that's just the agreed upon history. Let's clear that up right away. We have stars. So we're starseeds. we have this knowledge about these energies. We have these correlations between the energies and what we see in the heavens, because we came from there. Honestly, that's why I think we're doing magic, is to remember where we came from.
I believe that's part of it. I also believe that they didn't have Netflix. So at night they would watch the sky and they're like, well, this is what's going on in the tribe right now. There seems to be a lot of confusion when it comes to communication. And the elders were sitting out by the campfire going, that star, that light up there seems to be going the opposite direction. So that makes sense. And that's how I think they kind of started to equate it. Because also thinking about it from perspective, yes, I also believe that there's a possibility we came from another planet, even if it's just our intelligence that is from somewhere else. But perspective-wise, you have to be on Earth to see how Jupiter's moving or how Mercury is moving from our point of view, to understand that it's going backwards, so it's retrograde.
The thing that really made me feel like, okay, this was something that they've just encoded into a system to help us wake up later, is the idea that some of these planets are really doing things that go along with the description of the personalities, the personas that they give to the energy, like especially Jupiter. So Jupiter, as a physical planet, literally protects Earth by pulling things into itself, right? And it also is like this huge, humongous planet in our system. It's the biggest one in our solar system. And Jupiter has this energy of being benevolent and granting, abundance and prosperity and excess, but also like really giving you a lot in your life, giving you opportunity and luck. And that's what the planet literally does for our planet. And so I think there are some things that they're encoded in the system, basically. And when you start working with the planets intentionally, whether it's with mantra or with magic or with both, you start to uncover these parallels, and you get chills because, or at least I get chills because I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm remembering. I feel like I'm listening to a teacher from a very, very long time ago who didn't have a lot of time, who didn't have a lot of ways of explaining it to people who weren't quite ready to receive it, but wanted them to remember enough that the story would get passed down. And honestly, when you look at the histories of the two astrological systems, right, the Vedic system and then the tropical astrology system, their origins are really misty. They're lost in the mists of time. They can't explain exactly when they happened. And there's all these civilizations tied into both of them that also are tied into this like mysterious Indo-European civilization that has the same language system that has been scattered to all of them, which a lot of people don't realize that these words have like really close similarities on opposite sides of Mesopotamia, like into the Indus River Valley and into the Nile River Valley, and that these people were in communication with each other and they're all working on the same system. It's just they started to disintegrate and become fragmented as the patriarchy took over, I feel like, roughly between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago.
Right. Yeah, this is kind of on topic when it comes to how these things are kind of broken down. Like as we have gotten to the point now where we communicate a lot of ideas in one word, right? So we say, when I say the word guitar, you think of the sound that the guitar makes, you think of a band, maybe specifically that comes to mind. And especially with energetic languages like Hindu or with Sanskrit and Hebrew, as you start to study these things, you realize that each letter is symbolic of one whole thing.
Right.
So when you put the letters together, it becomes an entire idea that is that one thing. So Shiva, the S stands for something, the H stands for something. It's like a compact disc. How old am I? it's a hard drive. It's a hard drive of information encoded inside of one symbol, which is right. Yeah, exactly. It's a wax cylinder. It's so, and I think when you take it to the other side, when you go to the Nile and you look at these images, You know, a
Right.
lot of these hieroglyphs, it's the same type thing. Like what it's like a picture can have a picture's worth 1,000 words and a word is worth 1,000 pictures. It's almost like there's this mirror of the exact same thing happening. And it's how, you know, that's how that they were at least communicated that we understand. Because, you know, there's not a whole lot of papyri from, you know, 10,000 years ago from ancient Egypt. They kind of, you know, it starts to fade and goes away. So the only thing that we have is kind of carved in stone.
Unless you've been initiated in the mystery schools.
Yeah, and then it's a transmission.
Yeah. And those are kind of the only clues we have to the sound systems, but the sounds are the key to the magic practices. And even like Netflix documentaries will admit that they're like, oh, there's something to do with the sound vibrations happening within the pyramids. It's really hard to explain, but when you're in the king's chamber, if you lay down, the resonance is amazing. It's like, well, I wonder why those shafts are pointed straight at Sirius. It's like, it's so ridiculous how
seems like this might be connected, guys.
the sound comes through. And I feel like, and you were talking about this before we started recording, when you start chanting certain mantras of these, you literally feel the energy shift in different ways. You feel it either come down from above and move through you, or come up from below and move through you, or swirl around you. And being really mindful of what you're chanting when, just as much as the words that you're chanting in and of themselves, I think is important.
Right. And I think this is one of the reasons why people are so terrified of magic, at least people who have kind of a fundamentalist view of it, because there is a literal way. I mean, just from the perspective of go to a gigantic church somewhere in middle America and feel the energy when you've got somebody who has a big personality. You can feel it shift. You can feel the entire energy of the room and every person inside of it shift. Go to a football stadium, watch a game, and you can feel somebody gets, like one of the quarterback gets tackled, and the energy completely shifts to the, you know, the opposite team's in their favor. Like this stuff happens because of there's an emotional resonance, obviously, that comes along with it, and then there's also the verbal resonance that happens with the way that you shift other people's attention and our own attention.
Well, I think anybody who's been to a rave or a place like Burning Man would be able to like completely literally resonate, because when you're in those spaces where you feel the vibration of the music moving through you, literally, because the speakers are so big and the crowd is so dense and everybody's dancing, and the DJ starts manipulating the crowd and the rhythms start to change and everybody starts to literally crouch down and get lower and get lower and get lower, and they're waiting for that moment to jump, and nobody has to tell them when. It's not choreographed. It's not a flash.
Like the bass is going to drop, guys. Don't worry.
We're not all going to explode. But I think there's this palpable energy that creates a different kind of high where I've talked to a lot of people who are, you know, over 30 now. They're like, I don't even need to take the drugs anymore, and I still feel it. Like, well, now you're just tapped in. Now you're just aware that you're an empath and you're picking up on what everybody else is feeling. But I do think that the sound has so much to do with it.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there have also been studies about different frequencies and, you know, depending on where things fit, like the, God, now the word just fell out of my head. The this is why we need a computer in front of me. Solfeggio frequency. So there's like different tones and different pitches that actually have an effect on our body. So there's the lettering, the words themselves, and then there's the actual tones that can, you know, that can literally be used to destroy or multiply things. You know, if you use certain frequencies, it can, you know, we can use sonar frequencies to detect something. That's the way bats work. Obviously, that's echolocation. Yeah. You can use a high enough pitched frequency to shatter glass. You tap a glass and the singer starts to resonate at the same pitch, and then they shift it. The glass will shatter. It seems like magic, but it's like the frequencies are matched, and then it shifts, and the whole thing explodes.
And that's like really palpable magic, because a lot of people don't realize that's all magic is shifting the energy, shifting the vibration.
Literally.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. This is back to kind of one of the things we were just talking about with just the fact that we're in retrograde right now. listening to a lot of Graham Hancock, where I think a lot of people nowadays are aware that and just knowing that we're going into the age of Aquarius, we are in the precession, right? So we're kind of moving backwards from the way that we normally see the zodiac as it appears in the sky. There seems to be, we come into this world, we forget, obviously, almost immediately when we're here, because we're trying to, make sure that we're breathing and trying to find a boob to suck on, do all the other things that we do as children.
With our new human suits.
Yeah, well, newish. They're probably, I don't know how used they are. They're obviously recycled, but there's this idea. It's almost like that Benjamin Button idea of us learning backwards, and it's there's a lot of, the older we get, we have these past life. I'm sure that you've had a past life regression, something that I have yet to do, but we remember things almost in reverse. But as soon as we remember them, it becomes completely integrated.
Yeah.
And I think that's something, especially with magical systems as well. It's this, you just need a small drop of something to remind you of where you came from, what it is that kind of brings us back to why we're here. I think one of the big questions is like, what's the purpose of life? And it's almost like we're handed, we sign a contract before we come down. All of the stuff is there, and it's kind of like, all right, hopefully I can remember as much of this as possible before I kick it again at the end of this life cycle. So completely tangential, has absolutely nothing to do with anything. It was just a thought that I wanted to put out there.
In terms of retrograde, it does, because when you're reviewing things, it's like every time any retrograde comes up, it's time to review that area of your life. So Venus goes into retrograde. Figure out if you're really pursuing what you love, if what you love is shifted in some form or fashion. Like if Mars goes into retrograde, how are you using your energy? Are you using it in a productive way? Are you using it in an aggressive way? Are you using it to protect what you love? If you see Saturn go retrograde, it's like, now it's really time to review the work you're doing. Like, are you getting the lesson? Are you getting the lesson? If you're not getting the lesson, then it's time to wake up. And a lot of people, I think, give Saturn a bad rap because they're like, it's so harsh when it comes around. And Saturn's my boy. He's like, I don't know what it is, but I've always felt an attraction to that planet. And I've always, the symbol's tattooed on me at the base of the alchemical recipe I created for myself at the end of my Saturn return. Right? So I tattooed it on myself as a reminder of like, this is where we begin. This is where the work begins. We find where our Saturn is on our astrological chart. And I'm happy to do a reading for anybody who wants that. And you look at what house he's in and what sign he's in and who he's standing next to and who he's opposite from. And like it shifts because it's all this life purpose energy. And if you're totally out of alignment with Saturn, chanting the Saturn mantra will help make the energy feel more gentle, but only because you're shifting your vibration into alignment with the planet of Saturn. And so
it's not like it's not gonna solve anything. It will definitely ease the energetic of it, though. That's something that's very useful for any of these things, because I think it's also, again, it's whether it's in our mind or if it's in our body, which it is in our body, because if you believe the way that I believe, that the petals of the lotus vibrate, that whatever it is that you're saying, that energetic is opened up more. It becomes more present in everyday life. You're more, again, that comes back to attention, right? It's like, are you aware of what it is that you're doing? Are you listening to the universe when it's kind of like gently nudging you? Like, do you want it to smack you in the face? Because it will, sometimes that's what happens. And that's not always fun.
Yeah, you could definitely speak to that.
I can definitely speak to that. Yeah.
But I want to say real quick before like we go too much further away from the planets and away from magic. Have you? Because I know I have. Have you felt like difficulties with a certain planet or out of alignment with the planet, or as if the planet's energy is like working in an area of your life that you're like, I don't know if I'm ready for that, and used a mantra in order to a space that felt more aligned and more in tune with the universal energies?
Definitely, definitely Jupiter. I have most assuredly used the Jupiter mantra on a fairly regular basis. There's a song that I've written that is part the Jupiter mantra and part oh God, Skanda. It's part of a Skanda mantra, and it's
Ooh, two lucky
for
guys. Those,
I
like,
know
all they
exactly.
do is
The
great
song
luck.
the song is called Good Luck. And that's part of it. It's like my entire life I feel like I've been incredibly lucky. It's not even always something that I want in life. Things are just kind of handed to me. And when I looked at my chart and saw exactly where Jupiter was in my chart, Jupiter is in Leo. So the way that the understanding of that is I'm really dynamic. I have I'm very charismatic. So Jupiter grants me a lot of things through other people. It's not always, I'm very fortunate for that. Thank you very much, Jupiter.
Well, that's
But
still
it's
combined with your Libra, right? Like Jupiter's expanding.
yes, yeah. So because of my communication, my ability to actually talk to people and to connect easily. But for that, I feel like a lot of that, the way that energy works is I don't always get the things that I want, or when I do get the things that I want, they don't turn out the way that I thought they were going to be. So, so I've worked with Om Sri Budhaya Namaha to help shift the other things around me so that I'm taken care of. To be completely honest, a lot of the times I'm a hard worker. I do the things that I'm supposed to do, but with certain things in my life, it just doesn't work out. And the way that has worked for me is people will come in and they'll go, "Hey, let me give you a hand with that. Let me point you in the direction. Let me show you something." It has become a thing for me now with compasses. It started with you, and it is continued on every single time I meet somebody who is going to have a big impact in my life. They're either wearing a compass, they have a compass tattooed on their body, they're holding a compass and a lantern because they're about to go into a cave. I don't know. What the point is, like you start to kind of see where it's like, take a little bit of time, homie. Just sit back, relax, chill in your room. But you start to kind of see where. Thank you, Spirit. Our clock just went off, and that's usually when I have a good idea in mind. Where it is that the universe is trying to point you. So good luck can come from anywhere, and obviously everybody has it in different ways. Some people are really good communicators, and that would be considered Mercury, but it's also an incredibly lucky thing to have, to be able to express yourself in a clear and direct way. So for me, that's a big one. And I would say Saturn, but I think we all have kind of struggled with Saturn. And again, it's a review process of like, where did I go wrong? Where was something that I possibly missed? And yeah, what about you? What's something that you've used planetarily that has been a big benefit for you?
It's interesting. I feel like the sun was the first one I ever used.
I remember giving you that mantra.
Yeah. So like intentionally, I should say that
Right.
I did do the Gayatri mantra first and just didn't know what it was. And I also did like the invocation that you do before you begin your yoga practice. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave, which technically has Jupiter in it.
Right.
Gurave. But the first one I intentionally like used was Om Sri Suryaya Namaha. And I should have been saying Swaha because of past Saturn return by that point, I think. Although I might not have been, so we'll see. But yeah, the sun, Surya, was like the biggest one for me. Learning to step into my light and step into my power and step into my authority and my ability to heal simply just by being a presence, without trying to shift and manipulate and micromanage, which I think can get in the way. Like with any magical practice, people are like, I think I know what's best. And the universe is like, actually stop trying to manifest that because it's not going to work.
Right.
Like go for the big picture, go for the biggest, craziest out there idea, because whatever you imagine is still not even the most crazy, whacked out idea that the universe can come up with for you. Because our minds are so focused on the small details. And they're like, oh, just so you know, Tony Robbins can happen. Right? I mean, like, and maybe you weren't the Tony Robbins person. Maybe you're the high school teacher that talked to him. Right.
Mhm.
And being able to accept that we all have our roles to play and that we all have the ability to change the world, no matter what that is, whether you're the teacher who talks to the student who goes on to become this guru for thousands and thousands of people, or whether you're one of those people who is the first one to listen to that person who's going to become the guru and give them the confidence they need in order to pursue that path. Or maybe you're the person to create the ashram that they will come and stay at. Like, whatever it is, we all have our role. And I think that's something else that the planets can teach us, is they all have their role and they're all perfectly content doing it. And that's why they are such a huge force in our lives, is they've fully accepted, like, this is the energy that I bring to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a hard thing to kind of accept as well. I had a session with a friend of mine earlier this week, and we're talking about business stuff and the fact that working with people. I love what I do. I absolutely love being a healer and a massage therapist. And I was like, just give me some insight on my business. And she was like, okay, and got really quiet. Started the session. She goes, okay, are you willing to accept being completely poor doing what it is that you do? And I was like, I was like, that's a tough question to answer. And she goes, are you willing to accept that you could be rich beyond your wildest dreams doing what you do? And it's like, again, this comes back to the Tantra. It was like, oh, it's not that I have to have an expectation of being the ascetic who's completely broke or being the person who's absolutely rich. It's saying this is what you're doing. This is your goal and this is where you're going. And you realize that there's a path and there's a place where you're going to get no matter what. The goal is not to be rich and it's not to be poor and hungry. The goal is to be the best possible, whatever this thing is that you're setting the intention to do. Right. Are you going to be okay in either of those roles? And it's like, well, if you're following your path and you're following the energy that's inside of you, then yeah, you're going to be successful no matter what it is, Because
we have to redefine success. And that's
exactly
a whole magical practice in and of itself, which we can do on another podcast. But
right.
Yeah.
So, but what that comes back to is like, just like you're saying, like the path itself is going to get you to where you need to go. You may not become a rich and famous musician, but whatever you're doing may lead you to another person who helps you to have success in some other way. Like you may end up becoming a producer. You may become a songwriter for other people. You may be writing music that you're not performing, but somebody else is performing.
I mean, Bernie Taupin and Elton John did it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think being open to the path itself is hard to a lot of the times, because when we're kids, we set these grandiose ideas about what it is that we want to do. I wanted to be an actor. I fucking love Tom Hanks. I always was like, I want to be in a Forrest Gump type movie. I want to win 2 back-to-back Oscars. And as much as like, even when I was a theater major, I loved doing what I was doing, but I was like, I'm not the best at this. There's still other people that are better at as an actor than I am. But being me and just being in front of people and talking and being a teacher, that is something that is kind of in the same vein, right? You learn how to be a presence. You learn how to hold your energy. You learn how to direct people in the way that I always said, like, I liked being an actor. I liked being in film production because you are literally directing people's emotions. You're helping them to feel things that they might not want to feel. They may be uncomfortable with. And as a body worker, that is exactly what I'm doing. I do body work for emotional healing. So people come in who have had, traumatic pasts or who are dealing with, abandonment issues from when they were a kid. And I'm helping them look at those places where, they haven't wanted to look in a long time. It's those dark corners that they've been ignoring. And I'm literally doing the exact same thing I wanted to do as a kid, as an actor, by helping to, incite emotion in people, whether it's sadness or happiness, but it's in a completely different path. It was something that I did not expect to happen. And now here I am, and I feel very fulfilled in the work that I do. I absolutely love what I do.
And that's I think part of that is also you opening up to the possibility of not doing what you thought you loved.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
maybe I want to go
Thanks
back.
for tying it back around.
I am going to be on top of this time. Like, we're in retrograde. I'm really reviewing all of our words.
That's good.
Especially listening to that first podcast. If you guys haven't gone over and checked out the secret podcast that's up on our Patreons, it's hilarious. I think we were probably high.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I remember Chris and you and me standing on the porch beforehand. So
okay, vaguely, yeah. All right, I kind of remember.
Not
that
as
well.
bad as the time we all ended up just singing like the entire one. People are gonna enjoy that secret episode.
Yeah, I dropped out about 45 minutes in and just listened to y'all. I think at that point, but that was a much later podcast. The first one that is posted is very good, and you get to kind of see exactly where we came from too, and how we got to where we are. So, if you are interested in hearing a little bit of backstory and seeing what happened 5 years ago, how we had our first like long form conversation, please go and check it out. It's posted on Amy's Patreon at the moment. It will be posted on mine. We'll be adding new material as we move along.
Yeah.
So
each week we're going to be doing this podcast of Mantra Magic for everybody for wonderfully reasonable fee. You can get secret episodes on Patreon. And I think, eventually they'll be getting mantras too and attunements, and we'll be able to do polls and take requests and say, like, what do you want to hear? Like, maybe they heard you talking about, the emotional healing work and they want a whole secret episode on just that. Maybe they heard me say something about something that I do with eclectic witchcraft, and they're like, oh, I want to get into that. And we can do that. And we're so more than happy to do that, because we don't have enough time on these normal podcasts to talk about all the things. But I before we get off, because I will be very mindful and review our time, let's just say the chant for each planet. So in case they don't get a chance to hop on over to Patreon, and I'll try to include it in the show notes too. That way you can hear it at least for yourself. And if you need to pause and rewind, you can go back and just kind of pick up the sounds, because it's really the sounds that activate it. Om is always going to be the beginning. And I know, that's such a good Om.
Yeah, that's good.
Om is, how would you put it?
Om is the universal mind. It's the sound vibration of everything. It's the seed sound for the third eye. It is. I mean, if you start breaking it down,
literally just means like the beginning to me.
Oh yeah, it's just kind of like praise. It's like, what up?
Yeah. So it's what starts it, because it's what started the universe. It was the first sound.
Yes.
And then Shri is in all of them, and Shri is the feminine principle. And
true feminine.
Yeah. So I feel like for anybody who's not familiar with Hindu mythology, any masculine deity has to have a feminine deity in order for his power to work, which I think is phenomenal. And if the deity is androgynous or hermaphroditic, I don't know how to say that. They're
hermaphroditic?
Both. Yeah, hermaphroditic. Then they don't need any external sources. They just like are unto themselves. But if they are a masculine god, let's say Shiva or Vishnu or Brahma or any of them, they have to have a Shakti, a feminine principle, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Parvati, Kali. So they're the way that the mantras work is the same guiding principle. It doesn't matter if the planet is masculine or feminine. The planetary energy needs the feminine Shakti activating it. Like we talk about Kundalini being activated in the body. This is kind of like activating the Kundalini of the mantra itself. So you'll always say Om, the beginning, Shri, the power going into it, and then the planets. So, would you say everybody should stick to Namaha just for simplicity, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's the older you get, the energetic shifts. It's like as our Kundalini rises, the older we get, our Kundalini is also doing the same thing throughout our entire lives. It might be a slow process, like magic work and yogic work is to try to get it to rise while we're actually doing the practice. And where the energy actually lies with Swaha or Namaha has to do with where that energy is shifted once your Saturn returns has come up. So Namaha is for anyone that is younger than 28 on certain mantras. That is not a hard and fast rule.
It's true. Like Durga and Ganesh.
Exactly. So Namaha is the ending for those mantras, just because, again, this is a lot deeper and a lot more esoteric. It's how the energetic works inside the chakras. Yeah. So yes, I would stick with Namaha for the most part. Swaha, once you get a little more comfortable with it, and you'll actually start to see the more that you work with these mantras, you will feel an energetic shift. If you end it with Namaha or you end it with Swaha, you'll feel it in a different place in your body.
Right.
So yeah, so start with Namaha, I would say, and then move from there.
Because the way that I've found it referenced, and this is mostly from Thomas Ashley Ferron, but I did look it up on the internet as well. All of them all the planets mantras end in Namaha except Saturn. Saturn ends in Swaha.
It ends in Swaha after 28.
Right.
So that, yeah.
But they're not listed any other way. Like the rest of them are listed as Namaha.
Yes. And I think I know that we're trying to get a relatively short one tonight too. But before we go into the actual names of the planets, I want to say that each of the planets is also associated with different parts of our body. Right. So like there are different bodily systems or different areas of our body that the planets are connected to. So we'll probably touch on a little bit of that as we go forward, but it's not, we're already, where are we at? 41 minutes in. And I know you want to go to bed because you got two babies that are going to get up in the morning.
I do. So yeah, these aren't just mantras to attune yourself to the planets when you're doing magic or when you're learning astrology or whatever. They're also, like you pointed out, Jeremy, they are healing mantras because they relate to different parts of our body. And just like we talked about, it's sound healing. You're literally doing magic on yourself. You're doing energy work on yourself when you chant these. And so they'll affect different areas. So the sun is Surya. And when you chant it, you make it Suryaya, correct? So almost all of them you'll end with a yay, and why not? Because it's making it fun and throwing in that kind of childlike joy that I think helps manifest so many things. Like if you can feel like a yay when you're doing your magic, it's great. They're so smart. I love these yogis. They're so smart. So Om Sri Suryaya Namaha. For the sun. And what would you use this for as a body worker, as a healer? When would you use this for people?
Well, the sun is connected to a lot of different things. It's connected to our eyes, depending on which sun mantra you're using. There's something to clear eyes. There's something to clear our actual third eye vision. It's connected to the heart, the spine, anything that's kind of energetic, anything that would be like light that's moving through our system. If you feel like you're in darkness, using the sun, any of the sun mantras to have you to be a little bit more guided in whatever direction you're wanting to, for understanding, at least from the head standpoint. If you can see it or you're going to be thinking about it, I would use the sun mantra for something along those lines.
Cool.
Yeah.
Next one is the moon, Chandra. And Chandra, when you're chanting it, is Chandraya, or if you can't roll your R's, Chandraya.
Chandraya Namaha.
Om Sri Chandraya Namaha. And I actually really love to do this mantra during the new moon and the full moon because I feel like it just amplifies whatever energy is going on with the moon at that time. So I'll throw it in with whatever mix of mantras I'm doing for that particular ritual.
Yeah, anything that if you feel kind of bipolar if you feel like you're, things that are shifting relatively quickly, because the moon out of all of the heavenly bodies is the thing that moves the fastest. If you're having any trouble with that type of stuff, using a moon mantra is going to be helpful. When it comes to our physical body, the things that they are connected to, the moon is connected to our gastric processes. So things that are consistently moving in our system. Breasts, milk, the lymphatic system, non-blood fluid systems that are in our body, like perspiration or saliva, and the sympathetic nervous system. So the fight or the flight response.
Okay, cool. So it will it bring you back into your parasympathetic state then?
It definitely can help, because if it's something that's shifting quickly, then it's going to help you to try to find a middle. It's going to help you find a balance.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Would it also, I feel like this mantra, as well as Venus and Mars, like if you combine them, it almost helps with emotions too, like whichever one resonates with your emotional body.
Right.
But like beyond the physical body, like the actual emotional body could benefit from the moon mantra.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Om Sri Budhaya Namaha. So Budhaya is Venus.
That's Mercury.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Budhaya Namaha. Yeah.
My mind like is skipping over Mercury on so many levels today. I want to apologize to Mercury.
Sorry, Mercury.
Sorry. I'm wanting to go straight to Venus, and it's because I love her. So, but I love Mercury too, because my mind never stops. Hashtag Gemini rising, Virgo sun. So, if you feel like your mind is literally running around in circles all of the time, or if you're feeling like you're stumbling with words, or like your throat chakra is closed or too open, like you're talking too much, but nobody's listening.
Yeah.
Chanting with Mercury, Budhaya, will be really helpful.
Yeah. If you're a presenter, if you're a teacher, if you're a salesman, like anything when it comes to communication, this is very helpful, because it helps you to communicate more clearly. Like this is also a really helpful one for me when I'm working with people that have throat chakra issues, people who have repressed emotions, being able to give them the words to actually express how they're feeling. A Mercury mantra is fantastic for that. And again, if you're a writer, anything where you're trying to communicate your ideas and get your thoughts out onto paper or out into the public sector, this is something that's really helpful.
Yeah, and especially if you're doing soul writing, where you're trying to channel through from your highest self and your mentors and your guides, chanting this to just kind of bring you into alignment with them and bring your mind into alignment with your highest self can be very, very helpful. I mean, you can do Om Guru as well, but doing the Mercury mantra, Om Sri Budhaya Namaha, is going to help those words flow through you.
Right.
Okay, now Venus. How do you say her name?
Om Sri Suryaya Namaha.
Okay, yeah. Shukraya. I always feel like I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Shukraya. So this one, of course, is going to relate to all the things that have to relate to Venus, which goes beyond just romantic love. It goes to loving your pets, to loving your house, to loving your car and your job, to loving the taste of your favorite food and the feeling of a warm bath. Like everything that Venus rules will be affected by the way that you chant this mantra. And if you feel like you aren't experiencing a lot of love, especially like self-love, this is really useful.
Yeah, it's a big thing too for people who have issues with their sacral chakra. If you have trouble connecting with other people, you have trouble connecting with yourself, if you feel kind of like you have a bit of a dissociation, this is a fantastic mantra for that. It's non-sexual, but with the sacrum, it's like being able to understand like pleasure in life. It's not about pleasure in sex. It's part of it, but that's not necessarily the focus. So right. being able to re-embody is incredibly important, especially for people who have had some type of trauma, and that is one of the ways that we connect with the world is through our sacrum. So using this mantra as a male or a female is a good way to kind of get back in touch with yourself. I don't want to necessarily say your emotional body, but like how you interact with the things around you, the things that you love, like you said, the having good, safe boundaries. It's a very important thing. That's another thing that Venus teaches us, so that you don't become overly obsessed with whatever the object of your desire is.
Right. And learning also, I feel like to release attachment to your desires could be benefited by this mantra. So if you're trying to manifest something, like a lot of people have been talking recently about relationship stuff because we've just gone past Valentine's Day and everybody gets really triggered by that holiday. There's so many people who I've met, they're like, I just want to meet the one. I just want to meet my person, but they have to have this and they have to look like that and they have to have this job. Maybe like maybe they won't. Maybe your person is very different from what you're expecting because your ego's way too involved and you're not listening to your unconscious desires. And maybe you keep manifesting that person who can't tie down a job. Maybe you keep manifesting that person who's just like really codependent and really unable to make their own decisions and relies too much on you, and it's an energetic drain. Like whatever it is, your unconscious is manifesting that because you haven't learned the lesson yet.
Right.
So being able to say like, I'm going to really face up to my desires. Like I've literally created my life up until this point. I'm going to take responsibility for what it is that I desire. And clearly I'm desiring being either single or broke or overworked or whatever it is, right? You've desired this because you've wanted to grow. And so being able to say like, this is my desire right now where I'm at. And as my desire shifts, so on my life.
Right.
And so shifting your desire and then shifting your magic with Shukraya, Venus. Okay, next planet. This one I have to work on a lot. And so I started looking him up quite a bit after the last natal chart reading I did, the astrology reading I did, because I'm working on how I operate with Mars. So Angarakaye was like rolling off my tongue earlier today. Om Sri Angarakaye Namaha. And Mars is our energy. Where in our body does that manifest?
Solar plexus. It's connected to our adrenal glands. It's connected to our will, which is a very, very important one when it comes to magic work, when it comes to any type of energy work. You have to make sure that you're keeping your fire stoked, and you have to make sure that you don't have any energetic leakages. So Mars, I also see as kind of having a bit of a correlate with Hanuman. I mean, he's all about devotion, but that's, that is also, he's a fast monkey, he's like, that is what we are. And being able to kind of like work with those two things together, I think for athletes, that's a big one. If you really care about something, if there's something that you are devoted to, you're going to make sure that you have a single pointed focus. And you want to make sure that you have the energy to do that. So
I feel like you would tie Venus in with that because that feels a lot.
Well, that's the other side. Yeah, that's the Tantra. That's how the whole Mars and Venus thing. It's like, what do you really love? What are you really connected to? And then what are you putting your energy and how are you directing it?
Yeah.
And that's the dual idea of male and female energy in the first place. It's like,
yeah.
the hammer versus the arm that's swinging.
Well, yeah, we'll do a Tantra one. And I mean, that's the Shakti that we were talking about earlier. But something else that you said that I want to touch base on again is making sure your energy is not getting drained. So Mars really helps you set boundaries. It really helps you be able to step back and say like, okay, these people are asking me this, and out of the goodness of my heart, out of compassion, out of Venus, I really want to offer it to them. But Mars is going to step in and say, hey, excuse you, you can't say yes right now because you've already agreed to these other things. And the more things you say yes to, the more things you say no to as well. And being able to really hold that power of no in a way that serves everyone, because that's what the ultimate warrior does, right? He protects the boundaries,
right?
And as well as like going out and seeking what he wants. I always associate this with Virabhadra, the warrior that Shiva calls up and out to ultimately destroy the king who's offended him. And warrior 1, 2, and 3 in yoga, Virabhadrasana A, B, and C, I think if you hold that pose and you chant Om Sri Angarakaye Namaha, all of a sudden you've got this other kind of warrior energy, and you can literally slice off the head of any demon you come across internally. So like anything that's coming up within you that's just not useful anymore. And being able to also use it in terms of like the warriors, and you would relate to this, of the angels, right? Those clearing swords, like asking Michael to come in and just say like, hey, I've got some energetic cords and I don't even know who they're going to. Like, I don't know who I gave my energy to over the past couple of years, but clearly someone's still using it.
Yeah, it's the forge. It's literally like you're getting rid of any type of impurities.
Yeah.
Let's clear out all the bad stuff so that this sword is, able to cut down a tree or whatever it is that you're using your direct energy for.
Yeah, and so being able to ask Mars to help you set those boundaries around yourself on every level, physical, emotional, mental, and energetic and etheric, and say like, this is my energy space and it's my energy, and I'm going to use my energy for good, for my like productiveness, for my learning, for my growth, as opposed to spreading my energy too thin and surviving instead of thriving.
That's right. Don't you carry stones in your bowl of light.
Speaking of bowls of light and thriving, Jupiter. Gurave.
What up? Yeah, that's my boy.
He's Mr. Abundance. I always picture him kind of like a cross between Santa Claus and a pagan deity that is associated with like that time of year, the Holly King, where like he can get a little too drunk and then bad stuff happens because he's so big, he just like smashes trees. And so, but he wants to give you presents. So he's like coming through the forest and you're like, oh no, grandpa's drunk again. So getting into that space of Jupiter teaches us boundaries as well, because it's all of that beautiful, bountiful, blissful energy coming in, but you have to know how to channel it. You have to know how to hold it in your sacred container. And we can talk about creating those containers in sacred space again on another podcast, but Om Shri
Jupiter.
Yeah.
Om Sri Gurave Namaha. Yeah, Jupiter is like you said, he does a lot. He takes care of a lot of things. He's constantly swatting meteorites or asteroids and meteors out of our path. And it's associated. Jupiter is associated with our liver, which is does so much to keep us healthy. So energetically, if you're having some problems when it comes to like over drinking or overindulging in certain things, again, we're looking at all of the good things in life that Jupiter is giving us.
Yeah.
Being able to kind of work with him and, like you said, to set a little bit of boundaries. Really, all of the planets, everything is about boundaries. Right. You've got a tantric spectrum that you want to make sure that you're somewhere in the middle.
Right.
But with Jupiter, you want to make sure that you're reining back sometimes. Sometimes that's what you want to abstain. If you want to do a little fasting, Jupiter is also a big part of that. If you're wanting to give some things up and to learn a lesson from whatever it is that you're letting go of, Jupiter can definitely help with that. That's a great mantra.
Yeah. And I think also for people who are, moving into sobriety and who are recovering from addictions of any kind, like Jupiter governs that, because he is the teacher of it. He's the one who's been through it, and he's detoxed himself. Like you said, he rules the liver. So if you're in a space where you're learning how to have abundance without the addiction, like how to be able to fully enjoy life and really infuse your life with joy, then Jupiter is your boy.
Oh, that rhymed.
Oh, there we go. He's enjoying this. Okay, but now we have to get serious.
Yeah, seriously. Here comes old Capricorn. Here comes old Grandpa.
Oh, I love Saturn. I think because it's weird. I have Saturn in Sagittarius. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and so it's like I have an abundance of Saturn in my personality. But I'm also constantly wanting to learn about Saturn and how Saturn works. And so this mantra for anybody going through their Saturn return right now is going to be so, so helpful and so, so wonderful when it comes to just aha moments and moments of synchronicity and aligning yourself to the flow so that you aren't, kind of blindsided the way that Saturn and the Tower card in the tarot can kind of do to you during that time. but also so that you're really aware of the lessons. Because I think a lot of people go through their Saturn return and they have no clue what's going on. And then 6 years, 7 years later, they're like, oh, that's why that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas chanting Om Sri Chandraya Swaha, right? Did I say that right?
Om Sri Shaneshwaraya Namaha or Swaha. Yeah.
Swaha. But yeah.
Shaneshwaraya. Yeah.
Shaneshwaraya.
Yeah. So Saturn is related to some of the things that we don't really think about. It's related to the spleen, and that is a big part of our another big part of our detox system. It's a big lymph node that is helping us, like the tiny, tiny, tiny aspects of our body that are helping to kind of keep it clean, to keep everything running. It's a workhorse. We don't really think about our lymph system and what it actually does to keep us going. But if you start to have issues with it, you will definitely notice it, right? So again, that's another one of those lessons. If you're not taking care of the little details, Saturn is going to remind you of that. So it's whatever it is that we're doing in our daily life, the way that we eat, the way that we exercise, we want to make sure that our lymph system is working properly. You want to make sure that you've got all of your I's dotted and all of your T's crossed. Sometimes you can kind of let things go by the wayside and you might learn the lesson. It might be a gentle smack or it might be a hard smack like we talked about. Yeah. But Saturn is a good one to check in at any age. It doesn't matter how old you are. Mm-hmm. Working with Saturn is great to help you stay on track with whatever your life goals are, because again, Saturn is also is related to Capricorn, and Capricorn is the oldest Earth sign. So if we look at the Earth signs from Taurus is we're here, we're enjoying life, we're enjoying food, we're grounded, and we can get some stuff done, but it's a quick moving Earth. You move into Virgo, it's nurturing, it's loving, it's caring, it's making sure that you've got life, and it's serving. Yeah, exactly. It's worried about everything around. Capricorn is, looking at it from the astrological chart, is coming out of Sagittarius, who is the oldest fire sign, who was like, I've got my bindle and I've got my dog, and I'm going to go check and see what's on the other side of that mountain. Capricorn has come back from the other side of that mountain, and he's like, it sucks. Just stay at home and relax, okay? Everybody, it's the old grandpa. It's old grandpa energy. It's like the oldest Earth.
Well, so I think it's also, and that I would argue that it's also, when you look at the actual astrological representation of it, the sea goat, it's this being that's able to go to the deepest depths, right? They can swim and go to the highest heights climbing the mountain.
Right.
The goat climbs the mountain. Yes. So it's like they've been through the lows and the highs, and they're able to find the balance, which is what all of these mantras want to do. It's what all of these planets want you to do. And what Saturn ultimately wants you to do is to be able to live a life that is responsible so that you can enjoy it. That
it's true. And I was being glib.
So that you have no list left.
Yes. I was being glib, and I apologize for that, Saturn. Please do not smack me in the face.
Well, I've also been a Saturn force in your life.
Dude, I have got so many Earth signs in my life. It is unbelievable. So I have my Capricorn rising. It's the same thing. Like I'm moving towards becoming the goat. Like I'm a Libra with a Cap rising. So I'm learning to find that balance. I'm learning to find the extremes of highs and lows. And believe me, that is what my life has been. So, and we can talk about that at some point too. I'm so excited to get to a podcast where we're talking about tarot aspects with magic and mantra and like our astrological charts. So I love the fact that we're doing this, by the way. Can I just say that too? Thank you so much for being the Earth sign that poked me.
Oh, well, it helps that I have air, and that not only do I have air, I have Jupiter in that air. Jupiter and ascendant are conjunct. So that means
I never thought about that. We actually are inverted. You're Earth and air, and I'm air and earth.
So I'm working towards expanding my voice and expanding how that voice is used to help people, because the Virgo wants to do that. So magic happening right now, manifesting as we create, because it's not just about sitting there and staring at your vision board and hoping that it comes to you. It's about going outside of your house and doing the thing, or staying inside your house and looking at your vision board as you record a podcast. But
yeah, we all work in different ways.
We're all working in different ways. Just some of us work in pajamas.
And on that note,
go to our Patreon, check out the fun next behind the scenes, long time ago. Well, it feels like forever, but it's only 5 years episode that Jer and I recorded. And eventually we'll get to the one that's about how I met Anton. And it's like the whole frickin' story. And it's so good. But yeah, stay tuned for more mantras, more magic. And I don't know. We haven't figured out a closing yet. This is exciting.
I know. I feel like I just want to own, but that's just like, it's like the end of yoga, you know. We'll figure it out. We'll find a mantra that is a good closing.
A closing mantra. For now, thank you, brother.
Love you, sister. Bye.
Bye.